If you're like me and you love to use snowmen in your Christmas decor, then I've got some new ideas for you. I really like that the Dollar Tree carries these small bundles of yarn, and I wanted to show you a way to create a snowman using just a few items. In addition to the yarn, I'm also going to be using some of the foam board and some felt. To get started, I wanted to create a pattern for my snowman, so I just picked out 2 rolls of ribbon. One is a little bit smaller than the other to create my snowman shape. The great thing about this is you can make these snowmen as big or as small as you want. And you can see when I traced my ribbon rolls on my piece of cardstock here, I overlapped the smaller one just a bit on top of the bigger one to give me that nice snowman shape. I figured it would be easier to create a pattern out of cardstock rather than trying to put the ribbon rolls on the foam board in the exact same spot every time. It just made more sense for me to create a pattern that I could use on my foam board. So once I had my pattern all cut out of the cardstock, then I was able to move to my foam board and just trace around it using a pencil. Now I'm going to create a garland out of my snowmen, but you'll see once I have my snowmen finished, you can use these in a bunch of different ways. Since I'm creating a garland, I'm tracing out 4 snowmen on my foam board, and I'm just using a utility knife to cut them out. I should also mention that I picked the foam board to use rather than cardboard because it was white, so since I'm using white yarn, it would blend in together. You could use cardboard here if that's all you have on hand. I would probably just give it a quick coat of white paint so that you don't see the gaps in the yarn. Now don't worry if you don't cut it out perfect. Sometimes the foam board is a little tricky to use. I just used a sanding block and some scissors to clean up any of the edges. If you have kiddos in your life that you like to craft with, this would probably be a good step for them to do. I just started by taking my yarn and using a piece of tape. I taped it on the back side of my snowman, and then I just got to work wrapping the yarn in all different directions all over my snowman. This is why I wanted to create a pattern out of the snowman to start. I felt like if I would have wrapped each circle separately, it would have been a little bit harder to connect the two. So by creating a pattern where the circles were already connected, it made it a lot easier to wrap this whole piece of foam board with the yarn. And you can see that's why I chose to use the foam board, because even though there are some gaps in the yarn where it didn't quite cover the whole way, it blended in because it was the same color. Also keep in mind, if you didn't cut your snowman out perfectly, it's okay. As you're wrapping it around, the foam board will bend just a little and you can kind of even out any spots where you might have a little extra lump or bump. But I kept mine in because I think it just added to the uniqueness of each snowman. Once I had it all wrapped, then I just used a little hot glue on the backside to hold the end in place. There are a lot of different ways that you could create faces for your snowman. I'm keeping it simple and just using some cardstock. I'm just taking a standard size hole punch here and I'm cutting a bunch of circles out of some black cardstock, and this will serve as my eyes and also the buttons on the front of my snowman. I'm also using some orange cardstock to cut out some long triangle shapes, and those are going to be the nose for my snowman. If you didn't want to use cardstock, you could use pom-poms, you could use buttons, anything that you have on hand will do. And because these pieces are so small and I created my snowman on the smaller side, I am only doing a nose and eyes on mine, but if you had more space on yours, you could add a mouth too. Because these circles are a little on the small side, I'm using tweezers, and it made it a little bit easier to glue everything down. And I'm just using hot glue here. If you had kids that you were doing this with, I think you could use like a school glue, like the Elmer's glue. You would just have to give it a little bit of extra time to dry. Now you can get creative with what type of accessories you want your snowman to have. I'm using some red felt. I cut a strip out that was about a 1/2 inch wide, and this is going to be the scarf for my snowman. I added a little hot glue to the back side to hold it in place. Now this felt is from the Dollar Tree and it is on the thinner side, so I was really careful where I put my hot glue because I knew it would soak through and you would be able to see it. I added a little more hot glue on the front just to hold that scarf in place, and then I used my scissors to cut some little fringes on the end. And then as a final embellishment, I did take a button and I added it right to that scarf to cover up where that hot glue was. I mentioned that I'm going to use my snowmen to create a garland. So I have some wooden beads in 2 different sizes, and I really like these ones because they have a little distressing on them, which I really like. I'm just going to use some regular jute cord. This is a little bit thicker than the stuff you can get at the Dollar Tree. I get this kind at Walmart. I added a little hot glue to the end to make it easier to string my beads on, and I'm only adding 3 beads in between each of the snowmen. And since I had it in 2 different sizes, I put a big one in the middle and a small one on each side. So once I had my first set of beads on my jute twine, then I just used some hot glue and I glued my snowman right to the jute. I find this is a little bit easier when I'm creating garlands if I can glue the bigger pieces right to the twine or rope or whatever I'm using. In the past, when I've tried to tie on pieces, they tend to flop around or spin and they're never quite facing the right direction. So for me, it's just a little bit easier if I glue them right to the cord that I'm using. And you can see in between each of my snowman, I just added 3 more beads as an extra element for my garland. Now the table that I'm going to drape this on isn't very wide, so I'm only using 4 snowmen, but you can use as many as you'd like. And another idea I had for these little snowman is if you wanted to, you could add a ribbon hanger to the back and you could use these as Christmas ornaments, or you could also add a ribbon hanger and you could tie these onto packages too. I've used these car wash cloths quite a bit in the past when I've been crafting. You can always find these in the automotive section of the Dollar Tree. So I wanted to create a stuffed snowman using these cloths. In addition to those, I'm going to be using some baker's twine and a few things just to create a pattern. I taped 2 pieces of cardstock together to make it longer so that I could make a bigger snowman. I'm using a burner cover from the Dollar Tree and also a small plastic plate to create the shape of the snowman that I wanted. You could look around your house, find anything in your craft room or, from your kitchen if you have some dinner plates, just anything that you have that you can create a snowman shape in the size that you want. I want to hand stitch my 2 snowmen together, so I laid one of my car wash cloths down and I laid the other one on top of it. And I put my pattern down and I'm just using a Sharpie here and I'm tracing around my snowman pattern. Before I started cutting out my snowman, I took some straight pins and I just put a few pins in around the edges just to hold the 2 pieces together so that it would be easier to cut out. Now I'm using some pretty sharp fabric scissors here, so I was able to cut around the snowman in both layers. If you don't have scissors that are quite sharp enough, just trace your pattern on each cloth and cut them out separately. Since I'm stitching these together, it didn't matter if they were exactly even. I was just trying to save a little time by cutting them both out at once. Now, like I said, I'm hand stitching these 2 together because I really wanted it to have that rustic handmade look. So I'm using some baker's twine here that's in a white and sort of khaki colored stripe. You could use anything you want here if you wanted to use yarn or jute cord. If you didn't want to hand stitch this at all, you could glue the edges together or you could just run it through a sewing machine. The needle I'm using is actually a needle that you would use for plastic canvas. It doesn't have a sharp point on it because the weave of the car wash cloth is big enough that you can fit a needle like this down through it. I'm trying to zoom in here and show you what type of stitch I'm doing. I don't know if there's a name for this stitch. I'm just going down through the top and then coming through and going through that same hole again. And then I move over about a 1/2 inch and it just creates a stitched border the whole way around. Once I had it all completed, I left a few inches open on the one side so that I could stuff my snowman. Normally I would use some pillow stuffing here, but since I had all of this excess from the 2 car wash cloths left over, I figured I would just cut those into small squares and that's what I'm going to use to stuff my snowman. I got a pretty good sized pile of squares from the scraps on those car wash cloths, and it worked out really well. It was the exact amount that I needed to stuff my snowman. I just made sure as I was pushing them in that I was really getting to the edges all through the head and the body of the snowman. Once I had it filled up with all of those scraps, then I went through and just closed the hole that I had left for stuffing. Now my favorite part is the decorating. I'm using this on a shelf in my coffee bar area, but the car wash cloths are big enough. You could make this almost double the size that I did and actually use it as a pillow if you'd like. But since I'm going to put mine on a shelf, I wanted to accessorize mine and use some things that are a little bit harder. They wouldn't be good for a pillow. So I started with some burlap ribbon. I like this ribbon because it has some gold trim on it, and I tied it around my snowman in place of a scarf. Then I'm using some of the berry bead garland that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just laying that on top of the bow along with some greenery and a wooden snowflake. You can decorate yours however you'd like. And like I said, if you want to actually use this as a pillow, I would probably use softer things for decorating, like maybe a piece of fleece for the scarf, or add a little hat to the top of it, anything that's nice and soft and cuddly. But like I said, since mine is just decoration, I didn't mind that there were some pieces on it that were not so cuddly. I'm using felt to create the eyes and the nose for my snowman. I took a piece of black felt and I'm just using a quarter, and I'm cutting two pieces out at the same time. I felt like the quarter was the right size for the eyes that I would need. And then I also had this burnt orange felt in my stash. It looks a little more brown on camera, but I just cut out a simple long triangle shape, and that was going to be my nose. I used some hot glue to attach these to my snowman pillow, and when I hot glued down my nose, I only added hot glue to the one side so that it would lift up a little bit and give it more dimension. And I also forgot to film, but I did hot glue two buttons to the front of my snowman as well. I've been seeing on Pinterest and TikTok for a couple of years now, people use candy bars and they wrap them to look like snowmen. So this isn't my original idea, but I thought it'd be really cute, and I want to make a few to add to packages that I'm wrapping for Christmas. You just need a few different candy bars and some white copy paper. You don't want to use cardstock here. That would probably be just a little too thick. I'm starting with a standard 8.5 by 11 inch piece of copy paper, and I folded it in half so that it would be a little less translucent and you wouldn't see the logo of the candy bar through the paper. Now, I think that the wider, flatter candy bars work better for the snowman. That's why I'm just using the plain Hershey bars here. But I think it would be really cute to change up too if you wanted to give somebody a whole gift of different candy bars. I think it would be cute to use different ones of different sizes and shapes and put them in a little basket or box and have like a whole family of snowmen. I think that would look cute. I think the Kit Kat bars and probably also the Reese's peanut butter cups would work well for this too. I would stay away from some of the narrower candy bars like Snickers. I think it would be a little hard to make those look like a snowman. So you can see I just wrapped my candy bar basically the same way you would wrap a package, and then I could get to work on decorating my snowman. The little flaps on the candy bar wrapper itself, I did tape those down just so that I could get a flatter wrap when I was putting my copy paper on. Now for this first snowman, I'm going to give him a little set of earmuffs, so I'm just using some green pom-poms and a green pipe cleaner, and I'm just gluing it to either side of my candy bar. Then I took some red gingham ribbon and I just tied it around where a scarf would normally lay on a snowman, and I tied it into a bow. You could use fleece here or even a piece of fabric, but I had this ribbon on hand and I thought it looked good with the green earmuffs. Now, because this is just copy paper on the candy bar, I'm just going to use markers to draw on a snowman face and also draw on some buttons at the front. If you go on Pinterest, you can just search snowman faces and it'll give you a lot of different ideas on fun, cute little ways that you can draw different faces. I think these candy bar snowmen would be really great for holiday parties and get-togethers because it is just copy paper. You could even use this at each place setting. You could write the person's name at the bottom so that they would know where to sit. Or like I mentioned, I'm going to add them to some different packages that I'm wrapping. So there's enough space at the bottom that I could just write my to and from on there instead of having to add a gift tag. There's a lot of different ways you can decorate these candy bars too. I just kept mine simple by doing bows in place of the scarf. And then for a different idea for one, instead of adding a hat, I just made a really big bow for at the top, like a little girl snowman would have on her head. I thought it turned out really cute. I just took a piece of wider ribbon and I cinched it in the center with some jute cord and I glued it right to the top. Like I mentioned before, if you're not confident in drawing on some snowman faces, just go to Pinterest and search for snowman faces, and there's a lot of ideas there that you could use. I also wanted to show you that I made a few of the mini Hershey candy bars into snowmen too, and I think these would look really cute as little favors for coworkers or neighbors or anybody that you need a little sweet treat for. Thanks for coming to hang out with me again today. If you want more Christmas inspiration, check out one of the videos I left on the screen. And if you think about it, please give this video a like and subscribe. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you in the next one.